Hey, NorthRidge, thanks so much for joining us for our online weekend service. My name is Pete. I'm one of the pastors here at NorthRidge, and we're just so honored that you've joined us. Like most of you, I'm quarantined at home. I'm right here in my kitchen right now where I've been spending a ton of time, but I'm about to go plop down on the couch and enjoy this incredible worship service with you guys. It will be a great time of worship, and Pastor Brad's continuing his series, scratch that out, God's plans. And today he's going to be talking about people matter. And I know that this is going to be an unbelievable service that's going to impact all of us. But you know what? Besides enjoying and connecting on our weekend services, we have other ways that you can connect beyond the weekend. In fact, I want to encourage you to go to northridgechurch.com/virtual groups. And there you will see a plethora of different opportunities for you to get connected with other people. Opportunities like our Women's Spring Bible Study, which just launched this past week with over 400 women being a part of it. And it's not too late if you wanted to still join that. But beyond our adult offerings, we also have incredible opportunities for our students and our kids to connect. Our teams have been working really hard in this season to make sure that there's ways for them to grow in the midst of this pandemic as well. And so, for instance, our NorthRidge Kids team has been putting together age-appropriate activities and lessons, which is awesome. They also, on Friday night, do these really fun live Zoom calls with the kids, where the kids can connect with their small group leaders and their teachers, and they can connect with the other kids. And if you're interested in any of that, and I'm sure you are, because it's a bit of a struggle these days, isn't it? If you've got small kids at home, you're looking for activities and things to do, just go to northridgechurch.com/kids, and you can get more information about those live Zoom calls, as well as find all the lessons and activities that they're putting out weekly for you guys. And our students, they're finding ways to connect as well. In fact, every Wednesday and every Sunday night at 7 p.m., they do a 7-minute devotional. They call it 7 at 7. It's clever, huh? 7 at 7, 7-minute devotional, and then they break up into Zoom groups, which is a great way for the teenagers to connect with one another. And so, again, those are just some phenomenal ways that you can connect beyond our weekend service. Now, I'm super excited right now to introduce you guys to Veronica Coker. She leads our Love Runs ministry, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about that. All right, Veronica, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about Love Runs.
So Love Runs was created by NorthRidge in 2015 in an effort to combat human trafficking right here in the Metro Detroit area. It was birthed out of a desire to want to help locally, to try to bring freedom to those who are entrapped in slavery right here in our own backyards.
Wow. And you guys have had quite the impact, haven't you?
Yes, in the last 5 years, we've had over 1,200 people who have been a part of the team who had either run or walked a marathon, a half marathon, or a 5K. And we've raised over $1.8 million. And all of that money is going back into the Metro Detroit community in order to help combat human trafficking.
I mean, that's unbelievable. Almost $2 million. That's an incredible impact that you guys are having. I love it. So what can we do now? How can we help?
So our season for 2020 has just started, and it's been interesting because of, with the stay-at-home order, how do we do that? On Monday and Tuesday, Love Runs team will actually be driving around picking up returnable cans and bottles that we'll use as fundraising donations to help with human trafficking initiatives here in the local area. Last year alone, we raised just under $20,000 from returnable cans and bottles. And so it's become a pretty significant fundraising opportunity for our team. And so we're looking for NorthRidge family to sign up and put your address in. We'll come by and we'll pick up your returnable cans and bottles Monday and Tuesday.
I love this because this is something we can all do. We're stuck at home, but we can get those items together and sit them out, sign up for this. You guys come back and come by and safely pick up all this material, and we can still have an impact, even under this stay-at-home order.
Absolutely. Part of our desire, most of our desire is driven from 16 words: to wake the world up to Jesus and show them his love. And even though we're stuck in our homes and, this pandemic is happening, there are still ways that we can get involved, and still ways that we have to show people that they matter. And in this case, it's human trafficking victims. COVID-19 is happening, but we know that human trafficking is still happening as well. And so this is a simple, easy way for us to do something that's going to make a major impact and wake the world up to Jesus.
I love it. Okay, we all need to do this one more time. Tell us what we do.
So it's super easy. You just go to northridgechurch.com/love people. There's a quick little form, a couple questions that you fill out, and then we'll show up to your house. One of the Love Runs team members will show up to your house. You'll know it's us because we'll be decked out in our Love Runs blue shirts. We'll have an identifier Love Runs sign in the car. You just leave your cans and bottles in a bag at the front porch, at the front door. We'll collect them, and that's it.
That's awesome. Veronica, thank you so much for the huge impact you guys are making. You are waking people up to Jesus, and I love that we can all be involved in this ministry right from our own homes. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Pete. Thanks, everyone.
All right, well, we're getting ready to start the service. Before we do, though, I want to remind you, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, hit that share button. Share this with somebody else who needs to experience the service, because I'm telling you, it's going to be amazing. Also, jump into the comment section. Tell us who you are and where you're watching from, and let's all begin to prepare our minds and our hearts for an incredible time of worship. We're so glad that you're here.
Well, good morning, NorthRidge. Won't you sing with us? Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free. Oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace surrounds me. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free. Oh, he's free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house
Well, welcome to NorthRidge Live here Sunday morning at 9:16, and wherever you are and whoever you're with, welcome. We're so glad you chose to join us. In fact, Lincoln and I both are glad that you joined us. And he is, I don't know how I'm going to do a service without him in the future, but right now I don't have to worry about that. And so I hope you're comfortable. I hope you are ready to be engaged, because this morning's service is a heart-rending, inspiring service, in my opinion. And I just believe God has something really special for you. And it's a beautiful, beautiful day in southeast Michigan. And it's one of those few days in Michigan where we're not wondering if the weather's better in Southern California or Florida or Hawaii. And so I hope that today, after you worship and focus on Jesus with us right now, you'll be able to really, really enjoy it. But we're in a series called My Plans. Well, scratch the my and add God's, because it's God's plan's the only way that we can ultimately experience the life that we're looking for. But unfortunately, by nature, we're often compelled to pursue our plans. And that's where we mess up. And the book of Philippians, which is a letter, a very personal letter that Paul the Apostle wrote to the church in a city called Philippi, really addresses in a significant way the difference between my plans, our plans, humanity's plan, and God's plan, and what they ultimately lead to. Though our plan almost always feels better and feels right on the front end when we're making the choice, it in the end, always, when it's different than God's plan, leads to disappointment and loss and regret. Whereas on the other side, God's plans often don't sit well with us, don't feel great on the front end. They kind of go against everything that we naturally feel good about. But in the end, when we really follow his plan, they lead us to everything we're looking for, life and fulfillment. And this is definitely the reality that we're presented with in our passage this weekend. Paul clearly reveals the two conflicting plans for success in life, the two competing plans for finding meaning and value and significance and for making a difference in life in a positive way. Humanity's plan, which, if we're really honest, is our plan. We too are human beings, which is really, if we want to personalize it, my plan. And that's how I look at this, and I hope you'll do the same thing. What's my plan? What's humanity's plan? To love ourselves and then others if possible. I mean, we have all the goodwill to do great things in other people's lives, those who are close and far away. I mean, man, that just feels good to think about. But boy, as the first priority, as the first thing we think about, we're going to love ourselves. We're going to take care of ourselves. We're going to meet our own needs. And then, if we have enough, with the overflow, we'll help others. The only problem is, on our own, following our plan, there's never an overflow. So very seldom do we ever pay it forward in a positive way. And Paul addresses this as we move into chapter 2. And look at Philippians chapter 2, verse 21. He says, for everyone, not some, everyone looks out for their own interests. That's humanity's natural plan. That's my natural way. For everyone looks out for their own interests, and not those of Jesus Christ, not of God, not of others. And so the human plan, our natural way of doing things, is driven by, defined by certain characteristics. I just thought I'd lay them out. I don't want to spend a lot of time on them. If they interest you, you can spend time on them. But when we're loving ourselves and then maybe loving others, if it's possible, down the road, we're driven by personal ambition. Personal ambition, our own selfish ambition. And when we're driven by personal ambition, when we're loving ourselves and then maybe others if it's possible, when we're following our human plan, it causes us to compete with others rather than cooperating with each other. It causes us to see each other as rivals rather than allies, someone we have to keep down so that we can be king of the hill. The human plan, our natural plan, is defined by pride. You know, where we're at the center of our universe, where we see ourselves as the priority, where we see ourselves as better or more important, more necessary to take care of than others. It's defined by selfishness in the end, our natural way of planning and doing things. It causes us to see ourselves at the center as having no equal. And you need to know, when we follow our plan, it absolutely destroys the possibility of true harmony and unity, where we can walk side by side and together. For the person who's driven by selfishness, which all of us are by nature, dismisses someone unless they're simply serving their interests, unless they're making their lives better. And that's just pure selfishness, and that's at the foundation level, the human plan. And finally, there really is in the human plan an indifference for others. It's not that we hate people, it's just that, hey, we have to take care of ourselves, they have to take care of themselves. It's indifference, and it's not that we don't get a little emotion when we see other people suffering, it's just that we know we have to take care of ourselves, and we just don't have enough to share ourselves. In the end, it causes people to have only room to care for themselves. And if we're honest, when we look around at others and we look around at our world, and if we're really, really honest, when we look within, we're going to see this plan at work. It's why the Bible can universally say all of us have failed and fallen short. It's why Paul could say that everyone is consumed with self-interest. It's because that's who we are by nature. And I'm telling you, it answers most of the questions we have about why this world's so messed up. It explains a lot about our own personal lives. But then Paul talks about God's plan and how God's plan is antithetically different. It really does compete with humans' plan. We have to choose one or the other. You can't pursue both at the same time. And God's plan is to love others as we love ourselves. So that's this natural thing that we're going to care for ourselves and provide for ourselves. But God's plan is not to put ourselves ahead, not to selfishly make ourselves the priority, but to love others as we love ourselves. This is what Jesus said was the great command. When you really love God with all your heart and know his love, you're going to love others as yourself. And so Paul expands on this in Philippians chapter 2. I'm going to read verses 1 through 5. It says, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, once you become one with Christ, if you really want to bear that out and show the fruit of that, if you have any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion from your relationship with him, then Paul says, show it. Make my joy complete by not working against each other, but by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. If you're following the human plan, you're going to be divided and in conflict and competing with each other instead of walking together. But man, if you've really experienced God's love, if you're following his plan, walk together. And then he says, really prove it. Verse 3, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Don't pursue your own personal selfish ambition. That's an empty pursuit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. This is God's plan. Not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationships with one another, you need to look like Jesus. Have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Love others as you love yourselves. And so, obviously, God's plan being antithetical to the human plan, to our natural way of doing things, is defined by the opposite characteristics. Not personal ambition, but godly ambition. Not pride, but humility. Not selfishness, but unselfishness. Not indifference for others, but concern for others. And so here's the truth that flows out of Paul's letter to the church at Philippi, to us, as we focus on what God wants for us here in the 21st century. The truth is that genuine success, finding true significance and making a genuine and eternal difference that matters in the end, living out our value that God designed us to live out, genuine success is experienced through unselfishness, not selfishness. Paul's simply living out what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 25. Look at verse 25. Matthew chapter 20, verse 25, Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their officials exercise authority over them. You know, people who don't know God, who are living my plan, the human plan. They use every ounce of influence, every ounce of power, every ounce of prosperity to get people serving them, to stay king of the mountain. And then Jesus says these 4 words, not so with you. Not so with you who are doing God's plan. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Love others as we love ourselves, is what he's saying. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Even Jesus came not to get people serving him, but to serve them. And those of us who are following God's plan, that should be the fruit, the characteristic of our life. Now, we could talk about this forever, but I want to share a picture of it with you. I mean, I've shared the truth with you, so I want to give you a real life example of it in action today. And so to give you context, 6 weeks ago, at the beginning of the pandemic shutdown, I interviewed a group of medical professionals from NorthRidge about their experiences, their concerns, and their faith. Shelby Garduno was one of them. She just waved at you on the camera. This week, I had the privilege of reconnecting with her. I had a conversation with her, and the conversation so impacted me that I felt like it was a clear example of the truth that we're talking about this weekend from the book of Philippians. And beyond that, if I'm honest, she inspired me so much that I had to share not just part of the interview with you, the whole interview. This interview is worth spending time with. And so I want to encourage you to buckle up and take in and focus in on the whole interview. And then at the end of it, I'm going to wrap up the talk and make application of this truth into our lives. And then what we all love as we gather together in Jesus' name, we'll worship. All right. Hey, Shelby, welcome back to a conversation. And I appreciate you saying yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Not a lot's changed since the last time we talked because we're still in quarantine, but a ton's changed since the last time we talked, which we want to get updates about. But before we do, let me reintroduce you to everybody. Shelby Garduno, right? And she is a medical professional. In fact, Shelby, right on the front end, remind us, because you were with us in the very first medical professional interview we did, remind us of what your job is.
I am an ER nurse at Henry Ford, Maine, downtown in Detroit.
Perfect. Okay. And had been a part of the entire COVID response and actively invested in that. And that was our discussion beforehand. And remind everybody of your personal life. You are married
Yes.
to Adrian, right? How long have you guys been married?
It'll be 5 years in September.
Oh, that's awesome. 5 years. I was married 5 years once, and I thought it was forever. And now I've been married 80 years, and just kidding. So, and you, if I'm not mistaken, have a family addition coming.
Yes, yes. We are 34 and a half weeks. We are due the 8th of June.
That's 8th of June. Fantastic. Okay. Well, one of the reasons we want to follow up with you is because of your profession and the investment you're making and have made in the COVID response and being on the front lines of that. And we appreciated so much hearing from you in the first place, but also because of the fact that you've been impacted yourself by this pandemic. So talk to us about the job function, what it was like, and what's happened since our last conversation.
So the job function, I mean, pretty much every day, everything kept changing just because of all the different guidelines from the CDC and the World Health Organization and then from the government. So, I mean, our team downtown is just absolutely remarkable, and just the resilience and the adaptability of everyone just completely changing with no questions asked every day. It has slowed down a little bit. There's been a decent amount of staff members that we have ended up testing positive for COVID-19, majority of which are back, some which are still trying to get better. But I mean, just the resiliency and just the determination for them to pull through and just basically rock the COVID right out of downtown Detroit.
Yeah, seriously, we're watching these levels start to diminish. We're watching you guys through your sacrifice and your investment truly making an impact that's showing even in statistics. But you said an interesting pronoun a few seconds ago when you said some of the staff have contracted COVID, and then you used the pronoun we. So does that mean that you contracted COVID, right?
I have.
Yeah. And so, first of all, thank you for putting yourself at risk. And I am so sorry that that has impacted you that way. Can you tell me about what happens when you're on the front lines serving to help people who have contracted this virus, and then you get it? How long is it before you, do you have to become symptomatic before you find out? Are they testing you all the time? How did you find out that you were COVID positive?
So the incubation period in which that you can end up testing positive or getting COVID-19 can range from 5 days to 14 days. So I had woken up early last week. Everything was okay. Started off as a normal day, and then I started getting really bad body aches. I spiked a fever.
Were you at work?
I was not at work.
Okay, you were at home.
So then I had contacted, for us, we contact our management, and then we end up contacting employee health. And so I contacted employee health, and then I ended up going through the drive-through test. They'll swab you, so it's you got to stay in your car. You have a piece of paper that says your name and date of birth, and then they end up swabbing you. So they end up probably about 4 to 6 inch swab just up the nose.
Did you just say 4 to 6 inch?
Yes.
That's not comfortable.
It is not comfortable. It was a very tearful ride home.
Ouch.
So they did that, and then I ended up getting my test results about 4 or 5 hours after that, and I ended up testing positive.
Okay, and did you have to drive downtown for this testing, or where were you able to do your testing?
I drove downtown.
Okay, and I want to process that, but being married and being asymptomatic for a time, I would imagine, because of the 5 to 14 days, before you knew it, you had exposure with your husband, Adrian. Has he tested positive?
He has tested positive.
Okay. Did they test him automatically just because he had been exposed to you and you're a medical professional, or did they wait until he was symptomatic?
They waited until he was symptomatic.
Okay. And then he had to do the same exact thing you did, I would imagine. And if I'm sure that he's brave and he wouldn't want to say this, but he probably had a tearful ride home too.
I'm sure he did. Yeah.
All right. Now you have an interesting circumstance in that you're expecting, we've already talked about how delivery date in June. What has been the impact to your pregnancy? What do they say? Talk to me about that process.
So probably one of the biggest concerns is fever, because, it's not recommended, of course, with COVID to end up using Motrin for a fever reducer, but you're not supposed to use Motrin in pregnancy anyway. And then the new studies show that it's not recommended to really use Tylenol because it links with autism and ADHD. But it comes down to it. Do you end up in the hospital because you can't regulate your temperature, or do you take, 1 dose of Tylenol? and pray over this little pill, like, Lord, please keep me safe. And then you just hope that your fever breaks so you don't have to go into the hospital.
Right. Okay. And so, what was your symptomatic response, and how deep did your fever go? How long did it last? And then we'll get to how you're doing in a second.
So symptoms started off, I had a fever, and then it just kept going up. The highest it got was 101.9. Usually hospitalization for a pregnant woman is about 102.
Ooh.
So I had contacted my midwife, and, she's just like, I would do a tiny dose of Tylenol. See, I was trying everything, from ice baths, ice water, standing outside when it was 40 degrees at night, just something prayer. I was on my knees, on my patio, just asking the Lord for, strength and restoration. And then it's weird because it's no illness I've ever experienced before, because it comes in waves, and each wave is different. You can feel fine, for moments at a time, maybe up to an hour, and then a wave crashes, and then suddenly you're trying to get up, and it feels like the bones in your legs are just going to break from underneath you. Or the coughing fits that last 10, 15, even 20 minutes, and you're trying to catch your breath. Or, just the excruciating headaches, that just feels like it's just completely just in the center of your head, and they just don't go away, and then they eventually fade away like the tide does. The body aches are something I've never experienced. Even with, a regular fever and body aches from a regular cold. But just the severity where it feels like everything's dislocating, or it hurts to lift your arm up because you're just I'm pretty sure my arm's going to fall off if I lift it up.
Wow. So it waves, and you said it comes in waves, which is interesting. Would those symptoms literally disappear for an hour and then return, even fever in that, or were some persistent and others kind of waved in?
The fever for me was persistent, and then you kind of get a break from the body aches, the sinus pressure and the headache, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, maybe this is it, I'm coming out, and then it just comes right back again.
Unbelievable. Now, being pregnant, I'm just curious, did that in any way impact? Is it just the fear of what might happen from taking the Tylenol or the Motrin or whatever they direct you to take, and the impact on your baby? Or were there other ways that your pregnancy might have intruded in this thing?
So anytime the baby would move, it would feel like I was kind of getting kicked with a steel toe boot, because just how everything was, because COVID is primarily a huge inflammatory response. So I think with that, the round ligament pain, from getting bigger throughout the course of the pregnancy, it just felt like my abdomen was ripping apart. Anytime I tried to, move, and I had never had that, before, and I'm not that big, compared to a lot of other women, but just the feeling of just sitting there, and anytime the baby moves, it just feels like, my abdomen's just getting ripped open, or, the tiniest movement, that you take with so much joy, it just feels like, or it has felt like, if I'm being honest, kind of the joy was kind of ripped away because of just how uncomfortable and how painful.
Wow. I got it. And where are you at in your symptoms now? You said it was early last week when you became symptomatic and discovered it. So we're talking, 9, 10, 11 days maybe? And where are you at now?
Currently, I still have the coughing fits. The pain in the abdomen has gone. And then it's just the intermittent headaches, and then a ton of sinus pressure where it feels like, whenever you get into a pool and you end up like breathing in chlorine, and then it just kind of sits and it burns, and then it kind of feels like metal shards and you can't get rid of it. That's as close as I can describe, like, I guess the description of the headache along with the sinus pressure. It just feels like there's a ton of chlorine in there, and then there's just like metal shards just in your head.
By the way, your metaphors are working, and they're not making any of us want this.
Sorry.
No, you're telling the truth. This is what we wanted to hear, but you're good at visualizing for us through your words what's going on. Now, your husband trailed you on this thing. More than likely, he caught it from you. Where is he at in the process now?
So his symptoms are a little bit different than mine have been. He had a fever, and then he had the body aches. He actually had lost hearing in his left ear, which now he's starting to get back. And then he ended up losing complete sense of smell and taste.
Mm-hmm.
And he's starting to get that back. For him, he had lost his appetite. I don't know if it's due to the fact of, him just losing the sense of taste and smell. And then his body aches. And then he felt as if, like his bones were breaking. So, I mean, some were similar, but then, I've primarily had like the cough or like the intermittent like shortness of breath, and then he had where, I mean, he's losing senses, hearing and the taste and the smell, which I found that was fearful, because then of course, you just happen to think worst case scenario, well, what if he doesn't get it back, or what if he can't get his hearing back, and we have a baby coming? What if he doesn't get to experience like the first coo, the first word? So all that's running through my head. And, I just kept praying. I swear I probably should have put a lazy boy for God on my registry and just sent it up to him, just being like, it's me again.
By the way, it's fair. Here's the fascinating thing to me, and I know it's a bit different for you who are medical professionals and first responders like you both are, because they seem to indicate minor exposure is different than consistent and repetitive exposure. In fact, in our first interview with you medical professionals, I think it might have even been you, but I don't remember who told us that. It might have been someone else. But anyway, you've both gotten it, but you're in an age group that they tend to worry less about, it seems to me, in a health-related category in an age group, and yet you guys both got this, and your symptoms were pretty dramatic, including the coughing and the breathing thing. And does that surprise you from your medical professional knowledge of this thing and what you've seen, or are we kind of laboring under false impressions about this?
I think a lot of it is, I know a decent amount of like the younger, for the teens that are testing positive, the 20 and the 30-year-olds, if they don't have like extenuating health conditions, for their past, generally a lot of them are considered like the mild, maybe touch on the moderate. But I mean, we've had, friends and coworkers, who are also, frontline workers as well. And my husband ended up losing one of his good friends. He was fine one day, he tested positive, and then it just came like a thief in the night. He ended up going into the hospital. He was placed on a ventilator, and then a couple of days after, he ended up passing. So I really don't think that this virus is one that just discriminates. I think it just, and my husband has said it. He's just like, I can understand where this is taking out so many people, because how bad you feel during the waves. that it gets to the point where you don't know if you're going to make it through the wave.
Wow. So, and first of all, I'm so sorry for Adrian's friend, for the family involved. I mean, I just can't even comprehend it, but that adds to the fears that you guys had. Here you are in this new stage of life, expecting this baby in June. You both contract this. You've seen worst case scenarios take place. And if you get away with just the taste and the hearing for a short time, and it sounds like it's coming back, in that awesome, but you don't know when you're in this process. And can I ask this question from your professional background too? It seems to me that if you had different symptomatic expressions than Adrian, both severe, some similar, some different, this thing's very hard to predict. And some people just get symptomatic expressions that go into the lung and the breathing and impact them in those waves in different ways than you got it. You got the aches, or you got this. And is that how you're seeing this? Just some people, it's like almost the luck of the draw, how the body responds to this virus. And it's like throwing dice almost.
It is. I mean, and it's scary because, each of our, friends and coworkers, whom have tested positive, there's maybe, one or two similarities for symptoms, but I mean, it's varied so much. I mean, there's some people who just, have the GI symptoms, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and then they spike a fever. Boom, you have COVID. Or there's, the respiratory, sudden shortness of breath, coughing uncontrollably, unable to catch your breath, you're tested, boom, you have COVID. And it's very, the symptoms are very diffuse. So it's hard. There's no, like whenever you have the flu or a sinus infection, you're just like, oh, that's a sinus infection, it'll be okay. But I mean, with this, it feels like you're walking on eggshells, because you don't necessarily know, like, is this it? Is this one of the symptoms? Am I getting better? Is this symptom new? Is this symptom going to stay? Am I going to fully recover? What's going to be the new norm?
Right. So now, for those of us who haven't yet, to the best of our knowledge, at least in a symptomatic way, been positive with this virus, it's kind of easy to sit back and say, okay, enough's enough on the quarantine. Was it even necessary? And I'm watching it in the news. I'm doing a lot of reading on it. And I'm not saying this is my expression. I'm just saying there's a lot of movement in that regard. But you, as a medical professional, have seen it firsthand as a professional, and you've now experienced it. Has that changed your view? How has it informed your view of the quarantine, the shutdown? I'd be really curious as to how you see that.
I think, of course, like before, I mean, you feel like, oh, okay, like I'm helping others, they're sick, I'm not going to get sick. And then the moment when it just kind of feels like your reality is just stripped from you, and then you end up getting it. And if anything, like it really kind of opened my eyes, because at first, you just go to work. It's like, oh, okay, I'm essential, according to the government, I'm essential, I'm going to work. But then, looking at it like with a new set of eyes, it's kind of like I had a veil removed, and I understand, the importance of, like the distancing and, everything being shut down. I mean, yes, it's very inconvenient and it's not fun at all, but it's like a domino effect. Like if it hits someone, and this is what we see downtown all the time, because so many people live in multi-generational households. I mean, you have like 8 to 15 people living in this huge house. It's taking whole families out. I mean, and I can't imagine, having more family here in our house. It would have just went rabid.
Yeah.
And I think like that's the fear behind it, is, because you can show symptoms from, as soon as like day 5 to day 14. And then you're trying to like trace your contacts, who was I around? Where was I? Did I get it here? Did I get it there? And I mean, I can see a lot of people, living in fear from this just because of the unknown. And everyone wants to have that one factor where they're like, no, I know I got it here, because it's just that peace of mind. It wasn't me, it was, this, or this situation, or I was in this grocery store. But getting back to your question, I do feel that I do have a level of fear, I guess, not just being an ER nurse, but I guess just knowing how quick it can just go through a household. And if everything starts opening up, everyone's just going to be jumping out and victorious, just so excited to go get their plants and, and just go back to, our quote unquote old normal. But it is, I don't know if they're really going to understand the fear, because how quick all of this can come back and how quick all of it can spike again.
Yeah, you have a perspective that those of us who haven't been touched by it yet in a personal health way, family or personal, don't necessarily have. But my position where I have to, as this pastor of this large spiritual family, think of the consequences. I know of many like you who have had this and what some of the impacts are. We've had some losses. I mean, oh my gosh, there's just no way. I walk through our auditorium and I see how the seats are. And I just don't see this quick return, like, oh, it never happened. We're all sitting side by side. Hey, how you doing? Giving each other fight. I see exactly what you're saying, though mine is more detached. You're in the center of this storm, not just as a professional, but as a person who's experienced this thing. So it sounds to me like you and your husband, you and Adrian, are both on the path to recovery. You can start seeing a return to health. You mentioned the fear thing. I would really bet it does set you back on, oh my gosh, with us and then our baby and what's going to go on. So how does that relate to work and the expectations of your employer with being a first line, professional? Where are you at as it relates to that? What are your thoughts? Are you being supported in that? Where's that going?
I do have to say with both of the higher ups for both, like my husband and myself, there has been an outpouring, amount of support from like our management, like my husband's, like chief and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's really nice, how people are coming together, just like the daily little like check-ins, like, hey, do you need anything? We're praying for you. Or even just, like, let me know how you're feeling. We'll get you, coming back, as soon as you're able to. And just super supportive, where you never really realize that you're going to end up being put in this situation. But I guess also at the same time, it's nice to see the sincerity.
Right. Especially since they, justifying, you can justify and rationalize, we need people on the front lines. We need you. And they could lose the personal in the need professionally, and that they haven't. That's a beautiful thing. And would you expect that because of where you are in your pregnancy and your life, that you will not be returning back to the front line and to work before delivery, or you will?
I will.
Okay. And you've already said it, so I don't have to go there again. There's a little bit of fear involved in what that looks like, because no one even knows about whether you're immune now or what the status of that is. And so I get it. Let me get more personal now, like we haven't been personal. When you're expecting a baby, there's all kinds of things that come with expecting a baby. family and excitement and people participating in your life and all of that. How has that been impacted because of this quarantine and you're experiencing this virus now?
Well, I can say that this is probably nothing that I thought it would be. Our family, because of, before we ended up, testing positive, we were, just high risk carriers, so please don't come over, we won't be able to stop over, just to keep you guys safe, so it's been like phone calls or FaceTime or like Facebook Messenger videos. And then because of all of this, we had to cancel our baby shower because we ended up becoming positive. We had to cancel the diaper party. But I mean, even with, all the social isolations anyway, I mean, we wouldn't have been able to have it anyway.
Right. So, I mean, the pandemic itself, whether you got the virus or not, would have impacted all those social arrangements. But that's, and look at a lot of people are experiencing the sadness of not being able to be with loved ones who are suffering because of this, and the people in nursing homes. There's so many things, points of grief that hard to even comprehend. My mom was in a memory care nursing facility before she died. She died before this pandemic, but I can't even imagine her alone and confused in that setting and not being able to have people visit her, or her getting it and not. I can't even comprehend it. But you've lost a big part of the dream of what it would be like to have this baby and family gathering and getting ready for it, your first child, and you've already said the shower and all that stuff. That's just it. That's really crazy. And can I just say, I'm really, really sorry. I can't even, I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for the grandmas and grandpas involved in this. I really am. But I appreciate your faith, which comes down to asking you that question about your spiritual. You've already mentioned it. So there's no way someone can walk with Jesus and it not come out already. You've said you wanted to get God a lazy boy so he could have a seat because you're spending so much time with him. But talk about your spiritual health, your spiritual vitality, how your spiritual life has changed. We talked a lot about Psalm 91 in our first call, and where is that as it relates to your life right now?
I really feel that this whole experience has really opened my eyes to a level in which that I never thought it would be open to. When the waves would come, you never really think that walking without an ache or feeling that, maybe my legs are just going to break from underneath me. That never comes across your head, or your mind, oh, okay, well, I'll just, go to the kitchen, get a glass of water and everything's going to be okay. And then when you're walking and then all of a sudden you're just like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Or the coughing fits that never seem like it's going to end, how much you take a simple breath for granted, or whenever you wake up and your feet hit the ground, what a blessing that is to be able to at least get your feet to touch the ground, just all the small things, or when the waves disappear and you can take, what seems to be a normal breath, how grateful and how appreciative that you truly are, and even though whenever I broke down and I wept like a baby, on my hands and knees outside, and I was just praying after I got the positive results. I just thanked God, that despite being positive, that I have been blessed with the life that I've been given thus far, and even, if there's a chance, that it can end, that I have an almighty Father, who's kept me protected, and still does. I mean, even if, it came to the point where, it's time to leave this world, and I just, I thanked my husband, for choosing me and, being a huge blessing. And, you know, not saying I became negative minded or anything, but it felt very humbling, because then it's just like, even though that something negative is happening from this, there's no sense in trying to make it completely negative. You know, you have to stand firm and be gracious. You know, it could be worse. You know, it could be like, you know, my husband's, you know, friend who unfortunately passed, and, you know, his wife couldn't be there with him. And I think just the blessing of, you know, I'm so sorry, Lord, that I've taken every breath that I've taken today for granted, and I haven't even thought about it.
So it just increases your spiritual vitality, and doesn't it make you thankful in everything you said? It seems to be the underlying foundation that because of what Jesus has done for us and means to us, we have hope beyond this moment, which it changes everything, doesn't it? And it makes me feel for all those who don't, who they experience the same things you've experienced and the fears and all of that, but they don't have anyone to turn to. And can I just tell you, I'm really, really proud of you for not pulling away from him, but pulling close to him. That's just really, really neat. I'd really, really want to pray for you and Adrian and your baby and your family and all of that. And then I have one other thing I want to ask you about, but I feel like this is the moment to pray. And then I want to ask you about this, tell you about this other thing. And then hopefully I haven't worn you down because of this interview. I'm hoping you don't have to be in bed for the next 3 days because you've spent time with me. But is it okay if I pray with you?
Thank you.
Awesome. God, I thank you so very, very much for your grace. Thank you for Shelby and how she's been clinging to you, turning to you, calling on you. And even in this time of disappointment, loss, pain, hurt, fear, she's grateful for you and all that you mean to her. And I just pray for Shelby and Adrian for their lives. Thank you for their health. Thank you that it's returning. I pray that you keep giving them grace and strength and ability to go forward. I pray that you'd put your hand of protection around them and their baby, even as they think about returning to work. And I just praise you for their courage, their confidence, their strength, and their relationship with you. And I do pray for all the emotional and personal disappointments associated with this season of life. They can be grateful for what they have, but there are losses with the relational disconnects and all that. And I just really pray that your grace would be sufficient. Your grace would sustain them and fill them, and help them to know you with greater vitality and greater authenticity than they ever have because of this journey they're on, and use them to impact and change other people's lives, and be with that baby, protect that baby. And we'll thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So here's the thing. I heard about it. I think it was just yesterday I heard that you had it, or I can't, it might've been the day before, but we immediately said, we really want to connect with you. And then I started hearing the story about, you know, the baby shower and all that. These are, I have 6 grandkids, and the shower is this fun, relational, man, it's this cool time. There's so much joy involved in it, but there's also a practical thing, right? It's like, it's an expensive thing to have a baby, reinvent your entire life, and all of that, and not having that. And I know people will still probably try and tag you in that. It's just a whole different gig. But we as a church continue to look for ways that we can genuinely show love, yes, for those who don't know Jesus, but yes, for those who do as well. And so here's the thing. When I heard that, we started talking about it. And if I'm not mistaken, you're going to go the real diaper route. Isn't that kind of how you guys are planning on going, right? Yeah. And just so you know, I love that. Roxanne and I, for our first 2, we had 3, Carissa, Blake, and Ellie. For Chris and Blake, we went cloth diapers. We didn't do it because it was environmentally cool. We didn't do it because it's better for the kids. We did it because we were so downright poor. It was the only way we could go at it. And back then, you know, I mean, diapers were a whole different gig. But I love that you've made that choice. So if this is okay, what we would like to do as your church family, and I just get to represent the church family, we'd love to give you $1,000 to fully equip yourself with the cloth diapers and the onesies you need and the wipes you need to get this thing going. And the way we calculate it, that should give you at least a good start towards that, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. We respect you. We care about you. We're trying to empathize with your circumstance in life, and you got me emotional too here. We want you to know you're loved, that you're not alone, that your faith is encouraging us, and we want to keep bolstering. So we're hoping that will form a big foundation for you, and then all of your friends can go in different directions to help you and your family to move forward with that. So, and hopefully every time you put a diaper on that child, you can say, Jesus, thank you for loving me and for showing me that, and that you can tell your kids one day that it was your church that actually helped you diaper.
Yeah. No, thank you so much.
Diaper.
We love you guys so much. I mean, our whole, like, I mean, we just keep watching church service after church service, because I mean, you help make this go by with a lot of ease. So thank you.
Well, you're loved and you're encouraged. And I said at the end of our first interview, if there's anything you need, if there's anything going on, please let us know. This continues. And thank you for being willing to go out there and put yourself at risk. And whatever we can do to help you, seriously. And I can't wait to hug you guys personally instead of virtually, and to meet that baby of yours. And we'll be continuing to pray for you, Adrian, and your baby, and just be encouraged.
Thank you so very much.
Thanks. We love you. And I look forward to talking to you again when you're all the way back to health.
Yeah.
Okay? See you, kiddo.
The sun is sleeping, too afraid of what might show up while you're dreaming. Nobody sees you. Nobody would believe. Every day you try to pick up all the pieces, all the memories, they somehow never leave us. Nobody sees you. Nobody would believe you. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they said about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. And God only knows what they said about you. God only knows the real you. And there's a kind of love that God only knows. There's a kind of love that there's a kind of love. There's a kind of love that there's a kind of love. You keep a cover over every single secret, so afraid if someone saw them they would leave. But somebody sees it. Somebody never leaves. And God only knows what you've been through. And God only knows what they said about you. God only knows how it's killing you. There's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. And God only knows what they said about you. God only knows the real you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. There's a kind of love that there's a kind of love. There's a kind of love that there's a kind of love. For the lonely, for the ashamed, the misunderstood and the ones to blame. But if we could start over, we could start over, we could start over. Oh, for the lonely, for the ashamed, the misunderstood and the ones to blame. What if we could start over, we could start over, we could start over. 'Cause there's a kind of love they say about you. God only knows the real you. And there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. And God only knows what they said about you. God only knows the real you. And there's a kind of love that God only knows. There's a kind of love that, there's a kind of love. There's a kind of love that, there's a kind of love. For the lonely, for the ashamed, the misunderstood and the ones to blame. What if we could start over? We could start over. We could start over. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they said about you. God only knows what's been you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows.
Wasn't Shelby terrific? I think she's a beautiful picture of this weekend's truth, that genuine success, I mean, genuinely living a life of significance and value and that makes a difference, is experienced through unselfishness, not selfishness. I mean, just think about her story. She's near the end of her first pregnancy with her very first child and is just now recovering from all the gut-wrenching symptoms of COVID-19 that she described, including the loss of what would be normally a joy for a mother to feel the baby kicking inside, but instead it's a lead-footed kick to the gut. I mean, all of this agony that she's gone through, and yet, you heard it, she's going back to work to help care for others. I mean, are you kidding me? Unfortunately, I haven't always been such a beautiful picture of the truth that we're talking about this weekend. I haven't always followed God's plan. I've often gone with nature, my gut, and followed my plan. And that's why it makes me emotional in the middle of that song that we just experienced, when it asks, what if once we know God's kind of love, we could start over? Makes me emotional because that's what I need, to be able to start over, to get a do-over on this thing. And I think that's what all of us need, right? Because every single one of us has been stained. Our choices in the past have been darkly influenced by selfishness, serving self, putting ourselves first, missing opportunities, and we all wish we had done it differently, but that's where the good news comes in. Because of Jesus, we can start over. So I want to give you this application to our truth as we move back into worship. If we want to experience our best possible life, no matter what we've had in the past or done in the past, we want to experience God's best now, then we must choose to live God's way, in God's love. I mean, that's where we need to live. Jesus said at John 13, 34 and 35, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so must you love one another. I mean, we're not supposed to love ourselves first, and if there's any left over, maybe down the road, love others. We're supposed to love others as we love ourselves. And this is what Jesus was talking about. And then in verse 35 of John 13, he said, by this, everyone will know that you're my disciples. By what? Loving ourselves first and then giving leftovers to other people? No, by loving others as we love ourselves. This is how people will know that you're my disciples, if you love one another that way. But can we be honest? We can't do this on our own. This doesn't happen naturally. That's why Paul makes it clear there's a prerequisite to loving this way, to following God's plan. We can't just energize ourselves to do it. And the prerequisite, he said it in Philippians chapter 2, verse 1, we need to choose to be united with Christ. It's only when we experience his forgiveness and his new life in us and his love pouring into us that we can then follow God's plan and love others. Paul says it. Look at Philippians 2:1. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, what should be the consequence? Verse 3, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Live God's plan, not your plan. And so how do we do this? How do we experience Christ this way? Well, Paul said it in one sentence in Colossians 2:6. As you therefore have received Christ Jesus our Lord, so walk in him. And so that's how. It starts by receiving Jesus. You want to be united with Christ. You want to experience his love. You want to go from the darkness of your plan to the beauty of his plan. You need to receive Jesus by faith. And if you've never done this, you don't have to jump through a bunch of religious hoops. All you have to do is invite him in, receive him. So just before I finish this talk and we move into worship, would you bow with me and pray with me? And if you're here and you already know Jesus, be praying for those who don't. And if you don't, take my words in this prayer and make them yours, out loud or in your heart. It doesn't matter. Just by faith, receive Jesus. Say, Jesus, I believe that you came into this world because you love me, that you died on that cross so that you could forgive me, and that you rose again so I could have new life. And so I'm receiving you by faith right now, asking you to take my sin, forgive me, and make me new. In Jesus' name, amen. And if you just received Jesus, I just want to encourage you, let us know, would you? I mean, we will pray for you and celebrate with you, but more than that, we want to give you a New Testament part of the Bible, and we want to share with you next steps that you can take. And all you have to do is text us. You can see how on the screen there. But once you've received Jesus, if you're really going to be united with Jesus and follow God's plan instead of man's plan, then you need to walk in Jesus. You know, receive him and then walk in him, live in him. See, we need to each and every day of our lives, in each and every circumstance, with each and every choice we make, intentionally choose to walk in him and live in him. If we don't, we're going to, and I've found this by so many failures, we're going to do what comes natural to us, our plan. But when we do, we'll live his plan rather than our plan, and we'll experience his best rather than our worst, and it will change our focus from self to him. And what it will do is it will, in the end, compel us to worship.
Come on, let's sing this song together. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh, we live for you. Yeah. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Sing with us. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Let's sing Jesus, the name above every other name. Come on. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life on you.
That worship song gets to the core of the whole conversation this weekend, of Shelby's story of loving others as she loves herself, and of the truth that we're supposed to do the same thing. I love it when it says, open our eyes in wonder, show us who you are, fill us with your heart, and then lead us in your love to those around me, around us. And that's exactly what following Jesus is supposed to do, because he's filling us from the inside out, and we no longer have to grasp for ourselves. We can give of ourselves. We can be generous. We don't have to hoard anymore, because he's meeting our needs, and we can love others, love our neighbors as we love ourselves. That's why giving financially is a part of worship. It's a way to say that God's our provider. We don't have to hoard stuff for ourselves and take care of ourselves first. He's taking care of us, and so we can give. And I just want to express my gratitude, my respect, my pride, and those of you who continue to give when the scary world we live in could make it easy to stop. And if you're a guest here, a first-time person, NorthRidge, not connected to our church, look, we don't want anything from you. We're not asking you to give. We want you to experience the hope of Jesus. But for those of us who really know Jesus, we want to give, not because it's mandated or to get, but because Jesus has already so provided for us that we want to show him that we trust him, not his gifts, that we love him and not his gifts. And it helps us as a church to do exactly what we're about. When we wake up to Jesus, we want to wake others up to Jesus. When we experience his love, we want to show his love to them. When we experience his truth that sets us free, we want to tell others, and then we want to invite others to be involved, because that's exactly what his church is about. Not shutting others out, putting ourselves first, playing to the inside, but reaching out and including. And so as we worship through giving, in a moment on the screen will be a way that you can do that, but don't forget to make it a matter of worship, that God would use our gifts to show his love around the world. In fact, would you pray with me? Father, in this moment, we thank you that we can do exactly that which Paul instructed us to do, not our plan, but your plan to love others, not just protect ourselves. And as we give now, use it to make a difference in real people's lives, to wake them up to Jesus. And God, I just pray that you would be with us in this time of quarantine, pandemic, fear and doubt and difficulty. And we just really, really pray, Jesus, that even if we stay in this valley for a while, we'll know that you walk with us, and we'll find joy in that, and we'll thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And so we sing, amen, amen.
His favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, and you're coming, and you're going, and you're weeping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he
receive it. I believe it. And everybody say, amen, amen. Well, God is truly good. Thank you so much for worshiping with us. I want to remind you that our prayer team is available. They are willing. They are standing by to connect with you. If you need someone to just believe in faith that God can do anything, to believe in faith to receive your blessing, all you have to do is call the number that you see on the bottom of the screen, and someone will answer and they'll pray with you. Thank you so much for worshiping with us, and we'll see you next time.